and I hate using the word recession just because everybody and their mother's always calling for a recession of some kind, right? But when you look what's going on with yields, what that's going to do to a housing market that is suffering already, you just have we're looking at car delinquencies, degrading credit reports. You got a lot of headwinds right now.
The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Any past performance discussed during this program is no guarantee of future results. Any indices referenced for comparison are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. Any references to performance of securities are thought to be materially accurate and actual performance may differ. As always, please remember investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. Please seek advice from a licensed professional.
And we are back with another edition of the Daily Dots. And I am joined as always by the brain trust himself, Mr. Chase Taylor. And for those of you that missed it, I thought we had a really good interview yesterday with Kevin Muir. And if you're subscribed to the podcast, it should have been sent to you. If you missed it, you can get it off any, whatever podcast site you get this off of. Or remember, you can also watch the video feed. It's actually the first, I've interviewed Kevin several times, and I've been on his show before, but we've never done it via video, which is kind of nice. I've had video connection with people before, right, but we've never, I don't know. I just feel like you get something out of seeing people. I don't know.
For sure.
Anyway, even though I prefer to listen to most podcasts just audio.
Same.
But most people don't. It's one of those...
only use them on YouTube when I'm doing dishes because I like to multitask.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So anyway, yeah, you guys won't, and you find that video, YouTube, just Know Your Risk Podcast. It should pop right up. Anyway, get to the markets. We just closed. Why don't you give us a rundown on today was all about rates.
Yeah, for sure. Rates got a pound of flesh from the equity market today. S&P closed down 1.6, Qs down 1.4. Ooh. I didn't even realize this until I just saw it. IWM, the Russell 2000, down 2.8.
Oof.
They do not appreciate the rates move. Equal weight was down a little over 2. Mag 7 held in pretty solid thanks to a unsuspecting character.
Hold on. Who was it? Who was it?
Google.
Thank you very much.
Only down 1.06 there. The rest of the world, all world ex-US, down less than 0.5%. So colossal outperformance from the rest of the world today. As mentioned, Google up about 2.8%. I think we'll probably touch on some of the why there coming up. But oil down about 1%, gold up 1.1, silver, platinum, palladium all up as well. Platinum up another 2.7, just massively strong 2 days there. Dollar down another 0.4, but notably broke the kind of little small uptrend line we had been building here for kind of since the tariff climb down. Yields is the story. The front end up 4, which honestly for the front end at this point is a good bit, but the 10-year was up 10 and the 30-year up about 12 basis points. So on the 30-year, you're up to 5.08, and on the 10, you're up to about 4.6 almost. So pretty significant climb in yields, and this one kind of disorderly, largely based on the fact that it looks like you could before too long get the big beautiful bill through Congress. For now, the Freedom Caucus is holding out, but the SALT Caucus got the state and local tax deduction pushed from 30 to 40, so that further deteriorates how much the impact on the deficit for the bill. And if they don't pay for that, which I don't think they're going to, the trajectory for the bill just keeps getting worse from a deficit standpoint, and I think the bond market's just reacting to that. And Trump came out today and said if the Freedom Caucus didn't vote for it, it would be the ultimate betrayal. So he's putting significant pressure on them, and I'm sure they'll crack, especially knowing that when they send it to the Senate's going to put it in the shredder to begin with. So, but for now, yeah, bonds don't appreciate, and then stocks don't appreciate bonds.
Yeah, I think that I don't know how quickly we're approaching it, but I feel like it's a really good time to buy something like TUA is coming up pretty soon.
Yeah, I think
I
think that may take a little bit more time, but yeah, it's kind of funny because the long end will end up pressuring the real economy enough to make the short end start looking attractive.
Yeah, I heard a piece of, I already told you this, but I heard a piece of information today that I found really interesting. A client of mine works for either the second or it's not Cisco, it's another one. So I think it's the second largest restaurant supplier in this area. And he was just in here, and he's not some macro econ guy that's like super into it, but whenever I interface with clients that are in industries like that, I just always ask him how it's going. And he's like, well, I think I'm retiring at the perfect time. And he said, why? And he goes, there's a lot of chatter going around about them needing to cut back on jobs. And I went, really? Why? And he goes, we've been seeing restaurant orders declining for like the last 5 months. And he goes, we thought we were going to make up for it on Mother's Day, which unbeknownst to me, I guess is the number one restaurant day of the year. And he said it missed everybody's expectations by a wide margin. When I add that piece of data, as anecdotal as it is, but you and I both admittedly like anecdotal data. And quite honestly, when backed up with real data, I think it can help you actually get a better picture. You got to be careful not to rely on it, right? But it's part of the overall picture. But when you're looking at the services, when you're looking at all these Fed surveys coming out, the services coming out, all this kind of stuff, and I'm hearing that restaurant and like that, and I'm watching Nike and Starbucks and McDonald's, and this feels very pre-recessionary to me. I hate using the word recession just because everybody and their mother's always calling for a recession of some kind, right? But when you look what's going on with yields, what that's going to do to a housing market that is suffering already, you just have we're looking at car delinquencies, degrading credit reports. You got a lot of headwinds right now.
And the Fed's made it sound like probably nothing until September at the earliest. And we were talking about this morning, like we've talked kind of all year about the fact that this was the year where a bunch of debt rolls over in the real economy. And if it rolls over at rates like this, it rolls over higher, which obviously is a squeeze on the economy. And I think, I for a good chunk of this year figured four cuts, probably at least 3. But now if you're talking like we're not doing anything until September,
what does the market have priced in right now?
Let me see if I can find it, because it's changed a lot here lately. Obviously, whenever the big thing was the China tariff going from like 10 billion% to 30. Everything has rightfully gone up from there. So naturally, the need for rate cuts has dramatically fallen since then. I wasn't sure if this would work on mobile or not, but it does. Maybe, kind of.
Yeah, I just think it's looking like there are a lot of pressures. And then I think that is coalescing with more people by definition. I feel like you can see it in the market, at least recently.
You're at two cuts price right now.
Boy,
we were at 4.
Boy, from the way, I think you can make an argument that that's too optimistic as well. Listen to the Fed. Yeah, Bostic said sure. he sees 1.
Right. And it could just go either way. A lot of it depends on, a lot of policy path between here and there. So
I think that it feels to me like there is a big misread going on right now in the economy. I think everybody is attributing any and all weakness to tariffs and stuff like that. You're watching many,
we've barely even had tariffs.
Yeah, we barely had it
that have hit prices yet.
That is not what's causing this. That is not what's causing that. That's not why Tesla's sales. Tesla's a different one, but when I'm hearing that about restaurants, and I'm seeing Nike, Starbucks, all the ones we've talked about.
Speaking of, I'll look at the credit card data on some different restaurants and try to see what that looks like. Yeah. One of the interesting things. So retail sales, you can carve out just the bars and restaurants. And 2 months ago, it was pretty ugly. but then last month it was solid. So I want to see what the card data is saying about it. And then like Redbook retail sales are still very strong, and that's like a nice like for like comp of same store sales across the whole economy, and that comes out like frequently, and that's still like 5.8 or something year
I
over
know,
year.
but how is that there? And yet we're watching McDonald's, Starbucks,
Yeah,
Nike. It's
fair.
not adding up.
I mean, I guess it's going somewhere else.
Well, the
But
other
then
thing,
again, you know, like because
price increases
yeah,
too,
right, you know,
right?
groceries, things like that are expensive enough to where you can have some decent
And
gains.
and the other thing, and I even fall victim to it at times. Uh, we have not dealt with inflation for so long. You know, we are such a nominally growth minded country, meaning we've never had to do that math.
Right.
Right. It's been what's the not. So there's a muscle memory to where you're just like, oh, well, 5.8% comps. That's great. Well, not if prices rose 6. Right now, I'm not saying there was 6% inflation.
Right.
But, you know, look at what, you know, there were several things that have been really expensive over the course of the last 6 months, food wise. Right. There's multiple things.
And the scary thing is it's going to pick up because of tariffs. Like, I mean, Subaru just announced like their price increases they're going to have to do because of tariffs. I think yesterday, obviously Walmart said like, sorry, we got to raise prices, you know, and it hasn't even really hit yet. So you can see that stuff's coming. Truflation, who does a more common sense way of collecting inflation data, but makes it more volatile. It was down to 1.4 at one point this year, and that's back up to like 1.9. It may have been actually got down to 1.2, and it's back up to 1.9. My loose thinking, more so when we had higher tariffs, was going to be 3% this summer. And now it looks like it's still possible, even with the muted tariff picture. And to your point, the last time I checked food inflation, it was the worst since like October of 23 or something. So like it's actually not in a great spot here. And we're literally tariffing food to include the tropical imports like coffee and bananas that we don't even grow here. So
now, don't get me wrong, man. I am hardly a food shopping grocery person expert. I don't do the vast majority of our shopping, but you know, it's not like it's been 5 years since I've gone into a grocery store and done some shopping. But I went there this weekend and I was just looking at everything and again, it's not, I've probably been shopping in a grocery store 3 times in the last 2 months or something like, I was shocked by the prices I was seeing. I was sitting around going, holy smokes, this stuff is all more expensive than I thought it was going to be. I walked out, we were having some folks over for dinner. So I was going to make king salmon. I walk out with 5 pounds of king salmon, tartar sauce, garlic salt, and a bag of briquettes. And it's $250. And I was just like, whoa, this is nuts. Now, obviously, salmon is not, it's not tuna helper.
Yeah, it's not pork butt.
No, it's not. It's certainly not the cheapest protein that you can get. But still, I mean, like, if you told me like, hey, stuff's gotten expensive, what do you think that's going to run you? And I was like, oh man, probably 150, 170 bucks. Nope, try 250. Yeah. Just kind of a shocker. But and then you add in the housing market and stuff. Like, I got to be honest with you. This is kind of a setup I'm looking at right here where I'm like, I don't really know how you avoid a recession with these things.
Well, and what's important to me is kind of the second, third order effects if yields keep doing what they're doing. And I would say if this bill passes in a deficit expanding way, and it's important to take into account, the tariff income and stuff. Like maybe when it's all said and done, it's kind of neutral. But let's say it's not neutral and it is deficit enhancing, makes it bigger. It puts a lot of pressure on the Treasury and the Fed to do something to cap yields. I mean, that just is what it is. You have to. Not to say here, but like if we're pressing 6, 7, you have to step in and fix it, or things get too bad. But so that would be like a second order effect. Maybe is they have to step in and cap yields, right? But the third order to me would be, I think the market would see that just one thing to run like QE or something of that nature to cap yields. When you have disinflation and you have bad markets and bad unemployment, and like you kind of have a built-in excuse. But let's say this is so bad that yields spike to 6.7.
Well, there's all.
Hold on. While we're running hot growth and we're fine, and unemployment's low, and then inflation's 2.5 and 3, that's where I think the market, the global market goes, I'm sorry, what? No, like no, thank you. And that's where you get the dollar going from taking the stairs down to the elevator, and that's important because we keep talking about the global, investors kind of starting to slowly redeem a little bit. Well, if the dollar gets to the point where it's falling and not a little bit and quick, they're getting blown up because they don't hedge enough currency risk. So then you get redemptions that aren't like accidental, or like let's take our time and ease out of this. They're getting blown out of positions in the US. That would be a nasty scenario.
Yeah.
So just something to keep in mind as a third order effect, like we talked about the other day. Low probability, high impact.
I mean, I have no idea if this is accurate, but I would guess that the correlation between the speed at which international redemptions are coming out of U.S. markets would be like a 1-for-1 correlation in the speed of the drop of the dollar.
Right. Yeah.
100%.
Knowing how unhedged a lot of that money is, and it's easy as Americans, all we think about is like what's on your screen. It's like, oh, well, the S&P's down too, or the NASDAQ's down too, or whatever. For them, they're gonna be like, man, the NASDAQ was down 2 and the dollar was down 1. We lost 3% today. This isn't okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if that happens 3 days in a row, you're looking at 12% of your wealth just disappeared. Like
hey, I think it's a pretty interesting concept to grasp, right? Like the same thing that got you to 70% of global market capitalization is the same thing that'll take you down from that level.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. As soon as that inverses, right? Because nobody was worried about the dollar. They've been petrified about their own currency for the last 15 years. Now, all of a sudden that's flipped.
Right. People don't build houses too often in old lava flow areas for a reason.
Yeah.
And so the same channels can be used.
Yeah. Okay. So pivoting over to Google. And before I say that, it sure, we go through that conversation and it makes we've got plenty of exposure. I'm not saying we should add to it, but we go through that conversation. It makes me like my gold holdings even more.
Yeah. There's no two ways about it. Yeah. We saw it today. The market was down over 1 and gold equities were positive. I mean,
bonds. And I think almost the tighter correlation there is the other thing I think is as rates go higher and bonds get hit, that money's flowing right into gold, a good portion of it.
Yeah. And it's going to make its way abroad and into gold.
So, yeah. Okay. So moving on to Google, it'll probably just sell off again tomorrow,
I'm about to pump it anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I found it refreshing that they made the presentation they have, because I feel like they've done a good job running the company, a very good job executing running the company. I don't think that they've done a very good job on PR, which I'll take operational expertise over PR every day of the week. But yesterday they just laid out several things that kind of reiterated what you and I have been talking about. And again, I don't think it takes some big financial analysis. You start looking at these numbers and you're like, this thing looks, for instance, I was looking at some of those highlights from yesterday. I think it's cheaper than I even thought it was.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. Let me start by mentioning a client email that we got sending us a highlight from the compound guys downtown, Josh Brown and Nick, or what's his name? Batnick. What's his first name?
Josh Batnick, I think, isn't it?
I can't remember. Anyways, everyone else will know as soon as they hear this, but good show. I like those guys personally, but they talked about Google. And the client was just kind of like, and I just thought this was interesting, and they basically bashed Google and just said, that it wasn't a good business, more or less. But one of the main things they were saying is like, look, search is half of the business, and search is has a massive problem, which on the surface sounds right. But then Josh went out of his way to say, sure, search revenue's up, but people aren't using it as much. And so you look into that to see if that's true, and it's just not. Like,
It's just not true.
and that's, you can quantify if people are using it and they're using it more and the revenues are up. Not only that, but like the threat is from AI. It's from, the Perplexities and the Chat GPTs of the world, where everyone just goes there instead. But the funny thing is, like, the most used AI platform is Gemini. It's Google, through Google. Now they're gonna like better integrate Gemini into like just the normal search page. They're gonna do like the similar model that all these other AI folks like Perplexity has, where you can pay $20 a month to just run wild with the thing. You can pay a lot more, like $250 a month, to do like kind of unlimited everything. So people that are going to create AI videos and AI audio and like power users, people that use it all day, like creative types, where you can just pay the $250 a month and you just go nuts on the thing essentially. And it comes with like a YouTube Premium, and like it rolled up basically everything in one. So you're talking about new revenue from that stuff, and I'm not saying they're going to make a bunch of money on that. Most people are going to do the free version because that's how humans work. But the thing I'm excited about is they're going to do like a new glasses with Warby Parker. So Meta has the current glasses that are pretty sweet. I mean,
Ray-Bans.
they look okay. They're not like some ridiculous headset or something. And they got the speakers and the camera, the mic, but there's nothing inside your actual lens, no overlay. Google's plan, and I emphasize plan, like they're great idea guys. They don't always execute on the product side. But when I look at the Pixel, it's like, well, they're starting to, get there with making real products. But the glasses will have an overlay, so you can see notifications show up in your glasses. Like I was telling you, the plan is to have Google Translate, which is already amazing, translate onto your glasses. This is like the one thing I've wanted from AI all along. Translate in your glasses in real time, subtitles while someone's talking to you in another language.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is like everyone in like international business and stuff would have them.
Oh.
If you're about to go on a 2-week vacation in Europe, backpacking through Europe or something, you're going to be like, I got to get those.
Yeah.
Like, it's just crazy not to at that point.
Yeah.
But a bunch of new Gemini, like adjacent products that are going to cost money. They have their new model, which is amazing. And it's amazing for the search stuff, the video stuff, the audio stuff, like you name it. You can make all kinds of cool stuff with it. There's a new AI mode in the basic search function, and it's more powerful. So like they talked about a lot of stuff. And then the other thing was that we were talking about, and this may be a ways away before becoming real, is they have like a teleconferencing hardware software where you can basically like the equivalent of FaceTiming with family, but it makes them like 3D to you. It makes you feel like you're in the room with them, right?
Yeah.
Which, for geographically separated close people, that becomes a big deal, right?
Heck yeah, that's really cool.
If you're going to go on the road for 2 weeks and you want to talk to your kids at home, that's next level stuff. So point being, will all these hit? No, some of these will be in museums. Someday will never really make anything. But if they hit on a little bit of this, it's a big deal.
Well, another thing that nobody's and this actually caught me off guard, but another thing nobody's talking about, there aren't many phone companies out there taking market share.
Yeah.
The Pixel is taking market share.
Yeah. So I knew the search stuff for whenever I responded to our client, but I didn't realize the phone stuff. I just got curious when I was like replying to him. I was like, let me look into this. I just wanted to know if the sales had been going up for the phones, and they had. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. Have they ever taken any market share? And basically, when they rolled out the 9, you could see the sales of it jump, and it directly come out of the iPhone in both the US and Japan.
Wow.
In the past, they've always had like nice little bumps whenever they come out with a new phone. But then you go look at Apple and it's like, well, they're fine. Like it's just added demand. It's not really coming out of Apple. That one looked like, oh, this is actually coming out of Apple's pocket to a degree. But the reason I think that's important, I told you when the Pixel 10 comes out, I'm switching, or at least getting it and testing it for a couple months. Is, if you think about it, if the glasses are the coolest thing, and everyone agrees on that when they come out, and that requires a lot. But if they are, then you're going to need the phone. And if you think about, like, if you use Chrome, the glasses, the phone, you use Google Lens, which is an incredible app, translate like they're going to have all these different apps. They're going to have your calendar if you want, your email, and all of that can be rolled into a Notebook LM, which is something we haven't even talked about. It's an incredible product that Apple has. This whole thing could, or sorry, Google. This whole thing can just like form into like one big vertical ecosystem where if one person makes, one of these companies kind of bags the consumer in one big vertical where their AI and all of your data meet each other, where you can be like, hey, schedule, you're just walking and you talk to your glasses and be like, hey, schedule a meeting with Bob at 3 p.m. at this coffee shop. And it's like, cool, done. Like, and it inserts it onto your calendar and it sends you an email, you know, like somebody's going to win whenever they capture like that kind of whole basket. And I think they have as good a chance as anybody of being the people that win, because they already have your email stuff and your browser stuff and your YouTube stuff.
I was just going to say, think about the interfaces that the synergies you could do with YouTube and the glasses and the phone. And
they want training AI with video. I mean, that's a big thing right now, and they own YouTube. Like it's a competitive advantage.
Yeah. I don't understand. I do. I don't understand what, but I do. But it's just still amazing to me the willingness people have to talk about companies that they clearly haven't researched. You know, they just believe a trope,
right?
A meme until it's proven wrong. And
Michael Batnick, by the way,
yeah,
and he sold his Google on whenever it fell because of the Apple news.
Sure, yeah. So, and are we basically back to those levels?
Above,
yeah.
That whole thing didn't happen already.
Yeah. So, and then, you know, once again, we haven't really even discussed Waymo, right? And then the chip business, and there's just
which speaking of all this AI stuff they're doing is more and more on their own TPUs, and that's becoming its own ecosystem where they can develop the TPU like to perfectly work with what they're trying to do, and so it's that's a big deal.
Yeah, I think it looks
and like to your point, their PR sucks. Like they don't ever talk about like if the phone, and even if you look at the phone, like you have to find it, like it doesn't even have its own vertical in their earnings. They don't talk about it. It's like roped in with a bunch of other stuff. And it's like,
well, I mean, like people,
and I just forgot about Notebook LM on the spot. Like it's so easy to forget about some of their incredible like product lines because they're bad at communicating it. Sometimes they're bad at building the product. Like to me, the interface on Gemini is like, this could be a lot better.
I would also, and I don't know this, but I have got to believe that the interface that the Google phone has and will have with multiple different forms of AI, I will be shocked if it's not a substantially easier process with Google than it is with Apple. Meaning, you know, just what they're known for, right? Google plays well with others, Apple doesn't.
I will say, I think Apple somehow has gotten that message. They started to allow more like other AI stuff on the platform. They just re-added Fortnite into the App Store. It had been gone for years. So I think they've kind of got the message like, oof, we got a little too closed off. Maybe they listen to the show.
Yeah, maybe.
Because we ranted about that one day.
Yeah, well, I'm still not buying any more of your phones, Tim. I don't know. Like that's the problem with the Apple ecosphere is it does trap you. But I think that the spread, I'm looking at some of these phones coming out. I just feel like the difference, like you said, I want to give one a try, but I just feel like the quality of phone difference has just gotten too wide.
We've gotten to the point where there's so many things I can do with the Google phone that I can't do with the Apple phone. It's reached a level where like I'm thinking about it hard.
Yeah.
And I used to be pretty tied into the Apple thing. Like I did a bunch of iTunes stuff. I use their podcast app. I don't anymore. Like their podcast app sucks. So I
so does iTunes, man. I can't stand iTunes. Another one, and this has nothing to do with Google. YouTube Music is so much better than iTunes. The playlists are better. It's just easier to navigate, easier to use. I can't stand iTunes.
I always use this tipping point analogy, but I think we could hit a tipping point where a lot of people go from iPhone to Pixel.
Yeah,
that's no one has that in any model. No one even thinks about that. I don't think Google thinks that. Like
I don't think they think it either. But
I think the phone's an afterthought of Google.
Yeah, but it just goes to like I don't think people. No, I know people when you look at Google at this value, and there is no guaranteed investment out there, so I'm not at all saying that, and I'm not saying you should go out and buy a slug of Google. But when you look at it at this value, it just seems so stuffed with potential and big upside win potential. Not like, hey, we're buying them because they're undervalued. They're ridiculously undervalued, but also look at the growth. Look at the growth opportunities in front of them. It's big.
Yeah, there's so many different little projects under one roof that have significant potential, and then there's a collection of those projects that have the potential to reinforce each other.
You know what I would have loved to have been? I would have loved to have been able to jump into that interview and just ask them really quick. Do you guys know how Google's revenue and profits compare to Apple? I bet you they don't know. I bet you they think that Google makes less money than Apple. I bet you they do.
I think people would just go straight to the market cap in their head and think that was the case.
Yeah, they would absolutely think that was the case. And I have said that to so many people, and they look at me like
it gave me a headache whenever you mentioned it.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
You're like, that's not possible. I'm not going to lie to you. I knew it better than most. I hadn't done a side-by-side comp with Apple. I just assumed, I cut Apple a while ago. We haven't owned it for a while just because it got too expensive. But I was under the assumption that Apple was still ahead of them in earnings, at least. I thought Apple generated more profit. They don't.
You could have made a bet with me and you would have won. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. And I don't know why. I think a product of it is, I think that's another example of how just detached people have come from fundamentals. But if you are like, I bet you Batnick still has his Apple stock. You know what I'm saying? Like you're selling Google because of Apple. Like if you're doing that, you could end up being right. I'm not saying that that's not possible, but if that's the move you're making, you're not doing the work. You're just not. And I was saying that on an interview I did earlier today, and I was using the ridiculous comments out of Robert Kiyosaki today on Twitter. But I was just saying, look, I think he's a good guy. I think Kiyosaki wrote a good book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that helped educate a lot of people. But every single thing he just said in that tweet is just completely wrong. And I'm not even saying it's intentionally wrong. I'm not making that judgment. What I know is if he's being sincere, which I'm going to take him at face value that he is, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And it never ceases to blow my mind and we get things wrong all the time. I'm not saying we don't, but we'll come out and admit it. And what blows me away is how vociferous and excited people are to share a take they have on something that they haven't done any work on.
Man, well, if it's the algorithm, right? Who cares, right?
Yeah, there you go. It gets the views. Anything else, man? I feel like this is kind of a binary story at this point. Trade deal, well, not binary, but it's all about trade deals and rates.
Yeah, the budget legislation is kind of king this week, especially because there's just no data. So and then it's hot right now. They want to get out of there before Memorial Day. So there's a lot of pressure to get it done. Now it's become Trump versus Freedom Caucus. So that's gonna be interesting. And as that keeps evolving, and there's a good chance the Senate makes it even more expensive from a deficit standpoint. And then maybe people should actually listen to Chip Roy here because he's sort of the defender of the budget deficit at the moment. So
yeah,
of the bond market, I should say.
The other thing I'll say is both the Fed and the federal government and the U.S. stock market, I think, are in a much trickier place than price levels would have you think. I don't think it's not fair to say that they're walking a bit of a tightrope right now.
Yeah, I mean, the bond market is a governor that it hasn't been in my life.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, I was -1 the last time.
I have never seen economic threats from the fears of us losing rates to the high end. It's never happened in my lifetime.
I mean,
we're there.
We're above the levels where they caved on trade because they were worried about the bond market.
Well, and people point to the 80s with Volcker. That's not what happened. Volcker moved those rates up. That wasn't the market doing it. I mean, I'm sure, it played a role, but right?
It took its sweet time coming back down from there for sure. But that's because it was so baked in to worry about inflation.
Right.
And now we're kind of the opposite.
Totally.
We have it and people are still that's probably not. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, about does it for us today, right?
Yep.
All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much for listening. And as always, you can find us on YouTube, what was it?
Instaface, all of it.
Yeah, Instaface. That's the one. Instaface. Yeah, on Instagram, TikTok. Go on YouTube. Look at Know Your Risk podcast, and then just go to the website knowyourriskradio.com. Sign up, subscribe to the podcast. Got some more great interviews coming up. You're not going to want to miss. So we'll get those out to you in the next week or so. I think we got one book. I think we booked Brent Johnson for next week. It'll be fun to catch up with Brent. I haven't talked to him since we went to that dinner with Dimitri.
I haven't talked to him in probably 9 months myself.
At Coon's age.
Yeah.
All righty. So anyway, we'll see you guys soon. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you again tomorrow. You're listening to Know Your Risk podcast. Download and subscribe at knowyourriskradio.com.
Investment advice cannot be given without a client service agreement. Zach Abraham is an investment advisor representative of Trek Financial, an SEC registered investment advisor. Bulwark Capital Management is a marketing name only and does not carry a separate registration.